If I ask you today, like, what is the most strongest, material in this world, people can think the concrete, because concrete can hold tonnage of load, like one breeze, or even if we are sitting here in any building, any infrastructure, tire actually holding tonnage of weight, and this is rolling in a dynamic condition. Take at least 50 kg of load and then you run. So it's a very difficult job. Basically, it looks very simple because maybe some black body or something, but tire actually in a dynamic condition, it carries too much load. For anti-aging cream we are applying, why? We should protect our skin or any surface from the ozone or oxygen from sunlight. For tire also same, because it's also in outdoor application. Any outdoor application, it exposed to the sunlight, is exposed to the oxygen ozone, and this oxygen ozone is the major culprit to have any oxidation. Tire is not very simple. It looks like a black body, but there are 30 different odd components we are using. Like in a family, if you have 3-4 members of the family, if we are not all are speaking in a same goal or same motivation, then maybe it can segregate after certain period of time. For tire also same. If you have a air pressure, you check today maybe 35 psi or 40 psi, after 1 or 2 months definitely it will reduce. Those things cannot happen sometimes for in case of natural rubber, because all the rubber majority are the non-polar. To go and notice those things, you will understand what I am explaining here, because nobody concentrate on those patterns. As I said, whoever is traveling, either traveling by flight and then by bus or two-wheeler, three-wheeler, everywhere you have to depend on tire. I'm very happy that I am working in the tire industry, and it's a very complex in nature, but people should understand. As a common man, your question is correct. Maybe people always require environmental friendly product, but the thing is, from the industry point of view, as I said, they always think about the cost effective, lightweight and better strength. That's what the development is. Plastics things come. Previously steel was the majorly used things. Strength is also there, but nowadays same strength you can get it in case of plastic. Tire also development is going on towards that direction. Same requirement is not going to change. If it has to be implemented from the environmental friendly aspect, then the society has to accept the point that we have to buy the same thing within a 1.5 time more cost.
Hello guys, welcome to the Thoughts Unboxed. Here you are watching the English educational podcast, and in this episode you will be viewing and you will be going through the journey of tires, polymers and a lot more of things with exciting insights from every of the thing. Here you will be learning the technical things of the polymer science of the tire industry in very layman words. Here, you will go through the journey of the transformation of the tire, that is starting with the natural rubber and going deep into the synthetic and the combination of all those things. So this video is gonna be very informative and interesting from your side. So don't miss out. Just check out the whole video, because in this video we have Dr. Jagannath Chandra, who is a renowned scientist, actually a senior scientist in one of the leading tire industries, and through his expertise and through his knowledge we will be diving into such journey, and I'm very much glad that we had such a nice and one of the finest episode on this channel till now. Hopefully that you'll enjoy the whole journey of this tire and the industries with the sustainability goal in mind, and how the tires are important to us, how the polymer science is important to us. So all these things here packed for you in this video. So don't just miss out, just check out the whole video. So see you in the video. So welcome to this podcast, sir.
Yeah, thank
We
you.
are very privileged to have you over here. So how you are feeling today?
That's good. It's very pleasure to you invite me here. It's my pleasure, and I have never experienced this kind of podcasting. So let's see how it goes.
Hopefully, the discussion will be so energetic today that even a general people who are having no knowledge of this topic will be gaining something and will be going with some knowledge today.
Yeah, I hope so. I will try to make it as much as in a simple language, so that people will understand. It's not too much technical, but we can blend between the normal as simple as, and then also with some blended with technical knowledge.
So starting with the topic, so let's start the discussion from what is rubber, okay, and how it is obtained.
Yeah, rubber is it's elastomeric nature, and when you have rubber, actually basically a polymer. When you see polymer means, one is poly means many and mar means unit. When the same unit repeated number of things, then we called as a polymer. And rubber basically has a high molecular weight, and then you will get a more strength. And as it is raw rubber, you can't use it for any application. So for that we need to fill it with, we called as a filler, and you need to make a thermoset. So there would be a cross linking, and then you will get that kind of strength. Like whatever you see, like normal rubber band and other thing, there is certain strength, and the strength is coming from because of the some chemical reaction within the all molecular chain. And if you ask me, natural rubber, which is coming from your Hevea brasiliensis, it's a tree, and in our southern zone, we are sitting in Mysore. So if you think in Kerala, in those region, depends on the weather, and then from the tree, basically the latex is formed, and from latex they are coagulating, and you will get those rubber, as we called as a natural rubber. And there may be a different variety of rubber that we will discuss later. But whenever you require a elastic behavior, or you need a after deformation it should come back to the original position, when that kind of application is required, people can think about the rubber.
So in this natural rubber, where the synthetic rubber comes into being, and what is the role of synthetic rubber in that?
Yeah, basically, see, natural rubber is coming from the plant source. So people used to have, because of the cost, because it's more cheaper. And second thing is, natural rubber has a huge strength, which we called as a green strength. When you require a strength in your any composite or any material, people goes for this thing. And since it's a bio source or natural source, people love to use this thing. But it will not serve all the purpose wherever you require, especially for different application. Like if you ask me, although I'm working in a tire industry, so I can tell you the major rubber consumption goes to the tire and non-tire segment also. In case of tire application, whenever you require a very high loaded application, heavy application like truck bus or light truck, there you should go with the natural rubber because of the high grain strength. Why it is high grain strength? Because it has high molecular weight, and it's a high tensile strength also. If you increase the molecular weight, you will get the more strength. But not only strength, actually the synthetic rubber we used for the different application, wherever you require a different property like rolling resistance, and you need a some functionalized rubber, so that you can have a better bonding with a different composite or different filler. There you can think of synthetic rubber like styrene butadiene or butadiene rubber. So that give you the balance property. So you can modify it according to your, see, the rubber is such a polymer where you have viscoelastic property. So one is your viscous part, one is your elastic part. When, because as I said, the raw rubber mostly we don't use for any of the application, like not only tire application, there are some non-tire application also, like V belt, shoes, and all this kind of things, shoe sole. There, people require different application based on their requirement. In case of tire, basically, it looks very simple because maybe some black body or something, but tire actually in a dynamic condition, it carries too much load. If I ask you today, like what is the most strongest material in this world, people can think the concrete, because concrete can hold tonnage of load, like one breeze, or even if we are sitting here in any building, any infrastructure, concrete people can think of. But that is actually operating in a static condition, not in the dynamic condition. But if you could imagine, what is the role of tire actually holding tonnage of weight, and this is rolling in a dynamic condition. So like one normal in a common man language, like if I ask you to run from here and 2 kilometer within an hour, maybe you can run. But when I put some load on top of you, let's say I can ask you take at least 50 kg of load and then you run. So it's a very difficult job, having your whole strength and durability of this thing. Tire plays the major role there, because you can imagine one 18 wheeler or even 20 wheeler, 24 wheeler long truck or long haul application, but tonnage of load, it's carrying in a dynamic condition where maybe 80 kilometer per hour or 120 kilometer per hour it has to roll, and millions of cycle it's experienced in his whole life. So you can imagine how much load is carrying, and there you require both the viscous and elastic part. As we can compare the steel versus rubber, so steel is more elastic because the deformation is very difficult. And in case of tire, there is a rubber, there is a permanent deformation also after some stage. So why this permanent deformation? Because of the viscous property. Viscous generally comes from the plastic nature. Once you just stretch it, it will remain because the deformation will always remain. But if you have more elastic part, it will come back. And the property which comes from the tire composite or in the rubber composite, if you just ask me, it holds both the viscous part and elastic part. So it's balance between these two. In that way, actually, why the SBR or butadiene rubber, your styrene part is majorly for the viscous part and butadiene part for the elastic part. Wherever you need a balance property, especially the application in tire, you have, we call it as a magic triangle. One is the rolling resistance, another one we call it as a traction or grip, and another one we call it as a wear. So if you just imagine two things, the traction and the resistance or rolling resistance, these are two opposite behavior. Rolling resistance means when tire rolls, what is how it resists to the roll, because if rolling resistance is high, tire will not roll. If as low as rolling resistance, it can roll very freely. In case of traction, you need a grip, means whenever if you are just push your brake, so it should stop after a certain period of time or in a certain distance, and that distance should be minimum. That minimum distance will come when there is a good grip. So if you have a high grip, then your rolling resistance is also high, which is not desirable. We need a low rolling resistance so it can roll freely. If it is roll freely, it can't grip. So you can understand there are two conflicting properties. Then again you have to balance also the wear properties. Wear means, so you should have a low wear resistance. That means high wear resistance, so low wear. That means in case of tire, when it's contact to the road due to this high tonnage of load, load carrying capacity, so the wear particle is coming, which is called as a tire wear particle, TWP. So lower the tire wear particle, it is good, because where it goes, those tire wear particle, it's also polluting your nature, because it's in a micron level and it go to the aquatic medium. And finally, it's a health issues. It will go to the aquatic animal or whatever fish or aquatic animal if you are taking, and they are also taking this thing. And in tire, in case of tire, the compound what we are talking about, there are a lot of other chemicals also. So whenever there are tire wear particle, it also consists so many chemicals like zinc oxide or so many carcinogenic, because we are putting a lot of anti-degradants, because of we don't want, nobody wants it to degrade. Like for anti-aging cream we are applying, why? We should protect our skin or any surface from the ozone or oxygen from sunlight. For tire also same, because it's also in outdoor application. Any outdoor application, it exposed to the sunlight, it's exposed to the oxygen, ozone, and this oxygen ozone is the major culprit to have any oxidation. And once it's oxidation, then it will deteriorate the property. And to protect this thing, we are applying a lot of anti-aging chemicals. and those chemicals also leaching out in the number of cycle when it's going to the road and after road contact again, and those chemicals and these tire wear particles. So we want also low tire wear particle. So for that reason, if you have to balance this magic triangle, so you have to put lot of things in your mind, because this balancing is not as easy as like one can think of. First of all, tire is not very simple. It looks like a black body, but there are 30 different odd components we are using. It's a combination of polymer, it's a combination of filler, it's a combination of chemicals. This is for the compounding perspective. And because if you one can see the trade for truck bus, it consists around 14 to 15 kilogram of weight, which is consisting all these chemicals, and that is the compounding part. Then it also consists some steel cord or even the bead wear, because the whole body, the dimensional stability comes from that bead wear. Because I think you know that the bead portion, no, which is holding the overall safe or dimension of this and then you have also the fabric part. Even in all steel radial, sometimes it's a all steel. So because it has to hold the dimensional stability, otherwise it's not at all possible. So now you can think of, there is a steel cord or beadware, there is a compound, and there is fabric, and everybody has to bind together. Like in a family, if you have 3 4 members of the family, if we are not all are speaking in a same goal or same motivation, then maybe it can segregate after certain period of time. For tire also same. So the steel cord, it has to hold the hand, like, or it has to bind with the rubber compound. Even the fabric has to bind together. Otherwise, if the bonding is not correct, so any time there is a lamination. So delamination can happen and it can fail. So it's a very complicated things, and not only I'm just talking about in a material point of view, since my background belongs to compound or ingredient or material, more of a chemistry. But there is other part we called as a design part. This pattern or design also make major role while of this gripping and this rolling resistance, all this property. Because if you can notice properly, in case of tire, there are different segment in a truck bus, which is 10 or 20. It depends on the rim size and depends on the width ratio and whatever this trade width ratio. So sometimes your what is the contact pressure? It depends on the area, like the contact area. So it actually depends on the pattern or the design of a tire. Because if you notice properly, in case of four-wheeler tire, in case of truck bus, there are different kind of pattern you can see. And very minutely, if you see, the front tire has a different design than the rear tire.
So what are the role of these designs, different
Yeah,
designs?
that design roles is we called as a block, or sometimes it's a shape. Depends on how the gripping can happen.
Okay.
Because if you have a, like, when tire rolls, sometimes if it is in a winter region, or in a if you are exporting to Europe or something where in a winter, so the design should be like this. So grip would be there, but when the the water and other things can be passed through, means it should not hamper the rolling to the tire.
Yeah.
So and for front roll, actually we called as a steering. So whenever steering response and other thing, it should roll freely. But the rear wheel, it should take the major load of the vehicle. So that's what your pattern and design is different. If you have, you can make it in a different design, then your maybe gripping property would be high. Grip depends on what is the contact pressure on the tire. So if you have a higher contact pressure throughout the surface, we call it as a rectangular or oval shape. Oval means your less contact area, because it's a rolling resistance comes from the contact to the road to the tire. So if you have a higher contact, that you can imagine your grip would be the best grip you can achieve. But if you have oval shape contact, then maybe your contact to the surface is low. It can roll freely, but you will not get the good grip. So lot of things goes to the, when although I am not involved in the design team, but those who are doing all this pattern design, this thing, they have to keep in their mind how we can reduce. Because the nowadays the recent advancement is the rolling resistance should be low, means it should roll freely because of the fuel consumption. Because if you have lower rolling resistance, the better fuel efficiency.
Mm.
So maybe in a per liter, how much kilometer it can go. So those, if you have lower, fuel efficiency, then your tire, nobody will take it in a OEM or in the
Mm.
customer point of view. So
Yeah.
everybody wants the low rolling resistance tire. That is one part. But having the low rolling resistance doesn't mean that you can sacrifice the safety. Grip means
Yeah.
safety.
Mm.
So you have to also think, your tire or your the whole vehicle has to save, because the distance, the braking distance will be as low as. That is another part. And then comes to the wear particle, because the compound has to be strong enough, or even the overall tire has to. So where would be there, because when the Indian road condition or anywhere, it has to road through the road, and that depends on also the driver, how they are driving the car, because sometimes people think that one person can get in 24 kilometer per liter, and another driver can get even the 18 kilometer per hour. That depends on the how he is handling,
Mm.
how he is driving. That
Yeah.
is one part. Another part is road condition. I always say, if it's a autobahn or a long haul application, or like in a ring road, if you get this fuel efficiency in a certain level, may not be the same when you are driving in the city.
Yeah.
So that also depends on the so many factors when the requirement comes. Like we called as a from our OEM. OEM is our major customer. OEM means if any tire manufacturer for them, like Tata, Maruti Suzuki, and Mahindra, they
Mm.
are the OEM.
Mm.
So they have the market survey, what actually people require, or what is the legislation or regulation to
Mm.
have this kind of, because we are the component. Tire is only the one of the component in a vehicle. So if vehicle requires such and such properties, so tire has to fit, and tire has to have the property in the same line what the vehicle requirement is. Then from OEM the requirement comes, and from that requirement you have to develop your tire, and which have a certain rolling resistance, you have a certain wear properties, and you have a certain traction, and there are so many other parameter also nowadays coming, like noise, like durability of this thing, and like handling, comfort. These are the, previously it was only the magic triangle, now it's a polygonal behavior in nature. So
Okay.
you have to have a low noise,
Mm.
and that if time permits we will discuss. Noise is also a very important parameter, so it has to has the low noise, pass by noise, because when
Mm.
tire goes. So everything means the majority of the things comes from the tire.
Mm.
So one, if any tire manufacturing has a major responsibility to have a perfect tire which is fit into the perfect car,
Mm.
and that's the overall combination of this thing.
Mm.
Hmm.
So actually, this question maybe I have asked in the beginning, but
Hmm.
now it's just coming into my mind. So when we talk about tire, so is it only the outer surface or even the tube inside it, comprised of the tire? So what is the whole picture when we say word tire?
Yeah, actually, no, tube is a separate tire. When we talked about tire, it's a complete tire. There is no tube. Tube, two types of tire generally people use. One is tube type, one is tubeless.
Okay.
When there is a tube type, and then you have a different, like a tire, you have a tube, means that is
Yeah.
actually holding your air pressure,
Yeah.
the inflation pressure.
Mm.
The nowadays in modern, thinking, or the requirement is there should be a tubeless tire.
Okay.
Why it is so? When you are putting a one tube, inside the tire, that is actually having the different weight also, and that will increase your rolling resistance. Again, it related to your fuel consumption. But why tubeless tire? Because the inner part of the tire, there is called in. I can explain little bit, like in a tire there are maybe 12 to 15 different component, like inner liner, like squeegee, then your body ply, then sidewall, then bead apex, and then normal bead, then you have a belt or breaker, and then you have a tread base, then you have a tread cap. Cap is the outer surface which is contact to the surface. Then the inner liner portion is the inner part of the tire.
Mm.
Actually, why I am stressing this thing, because tubeless tire, the inner liner has the major part,
Mm.
because it has to hold the tire.
Mm.
And what I am already discussed, the tire has a major load carrying capacity. Who is holding that load? Basically the air is holding that hold,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that air actually holded by the tire.
Mm.
So then it has to strong enough, especially the inner liner. We called as it should maximum air impermeability property. So air should not permeable through the surface, because that's what the tire pressure monitoring system it comes. Let's say if you notice very clearly, people nowadays in modern days in tire also people are writing like it has to hold like 70 psi or 30 psi. Majority is 30 to 35 psi. Air pressure should be there, but it's natural process. If it's not like that, one your air or even the nowadays nitrogen also people are putting, there is a different perspective, because if you can have the inert atmosphere also inside this thing. So it has to hold that air for a longer period of time. What basically happens, like if you have a air pressure, you check today maybe 35 psi or 40 psi. After 1 or 2 months, definitely it will reduce, because air pressure from 35 to maybe it's 25 or even uh, 28, like this. How it is happening? Because somehow it cannot hold for a longer period of time. Let's say 1 year, not like that. So there is a permeability through the inner liner and throughout the surface, but that should be as minimum as possible. That's what the inner liner plays a major role. There is a two different things. If air is passed through, sometimes what happens, because inside the tire there is a belt or there is steel cord, and as I mentioned, the moisture or air, they actually major culprit to oxidize those steel cord, and then you have a delamination from there. So that's what your inner liner should be strong enough. And coming back to your question, like with tube type, people are avoiding, because the another part is, let's say if you have a puncture or something, then you have to remove the whole tire, then you have to repair the tube, then again you have to hold it. But if you have a tubeless tire, at least it can run another 10 kilometer after puncture also, because you can put certain things so it can hold the air for the maybe next 5 or 10 kilometers. I'll come later also, which called as a puncture guard tire. Even if you have puncture also, for you can run for longer period of time, or which we called as a self sealing or self healing. So in all these things comes for the tubeless tire, not for the tube type. Because once tube gone means immediately you have to repair. You have seen maybe previously people has to remove everything, but nowadays not like that. They can repair instantly. So that is the advantage for the tubeless tire.
So as for the synthetic rubber, we went so deep into the concept. So let's coming back to the same flow. So as we were discussing the, what what are the role of synthetic rubber, and as we discussed many advantages. Okay, the triangle part, okay, magical triangle, and polygonal, no, nowadays thing. Okay, so after listening all these advantages, do we have some major drawbacks of synthetic rubber? Okay, and how to deal with those disadvantages?
Yeah, as the natural rubber that comes from the word itself from the natural product. So people love to go for the environmental friendly application. And when you are discussing with the synthetic rubber, majorly used in tire or non-tire industry, all the styrene butadiene rubber or butadiene rubber, even EPDM and all other, they are comes from the fossil fuel waste material.
Okay.
So that means the petroleum based product. So whatever styrene is coming or butadiene coming, so you can understood the for environmental perspective, when it's the source is from the petroleum based or oil based, so it's better to avoid this thing, because otherwise when the manufacturing cost is also too high, because anyway the tires come sorry, the SBR or BR, it comes from the petroleum based product, then the refinery, then finally this product you are going to handle. And it's not a degradable easily, because either from natural rubber or SBR, once you go for the cross linking with the sulfur and other thing, anyway that cannot be degrade, but it can be recycled. But if you ask me from the environmental point of view, if we, because nowadays the world moved towards the sustainable world. So for the sustainable case, if we can reduce the usage of those synthetic rubber, that is good. But for you need a balanced property like rolling resistance grip. For that requirement, we require the synthetic rubber, but we can blend the natural rubber, maybe your 70 or 80 parts, another 20 or 30 parts you can blend it with the SBR, so that you can get the balanced property of the magic triangle or the polygonal approach. that you can achieve. But in an environmental point of view, since source is petroleum based, that's what it's not environmental friendly. But there is a, in a sustainable world that we can come later also. So if you can manufacture the synthetic rubber from the natural source means that styrene, which is the unit for the SBR or butadiene, that you can have those styrene from the sugar cane or so many from biosafes or some waste material, then those things you can utilize. But these are not a very cost effective manner, because since everybody, especially I can tell you, since I am from industry, in case of industry point of view, sometimes you have to choose the things which is available and which is cost effective. So once it is not very much, maybe it's user friendly or even environmental friendly, it's good for environment, but if it is not suited according to our requirement related to the cost, then the people are also avoiding. But all synthetic rubber, since comes from fossil fuel based, so better to means it's not that much environmental friendly in case of natural rubber.
So now let's dive deeper into the types of polymer which are used in it. That, as you were mentioning, sterile something and
Styrene butadiene, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
styrene butadiene and something. So if you can explain a bit more on that.
Yeah, those like the difference between, in case of natural rubber, is a polyisoprene, what we called, since it's from the natural product, but people are also having the synthetic polyisoprene, what we are making. But in case of synthetic rubber like styrene butadiene or even the butadiene or even the EPDM, ethylene propylene rubber, it's, as previously I explained, all are polymers. So like when you talked about, these are the unit, like styrene one unit, and I don't know you heard about this polystyrene, like so many things, in case of vehicle or car, a certain headlight and other thing, the manufacturing of the polystyrene or something. So styrene is a unit. Then why we called as a polystyrene? Because if you have number of unit, if you increase the molecular weight with the number of unit, n number of unit, then you are getting the polystyrene. In case of synthetic rubber, you have styrene part, you have butadiene part, and that SBR unit actually having the repetitive unit. So then you can get maybe 8 lakh or even the 10 lakh, the molecular weight, you see. If higher the molecular weight, better is the strength. And there also, if you want to go little deeper in case of chemistry, then you can understood the dispersity index, PDI, polydispersity index. If you have higher weight average molecular weight and then the number average molecular weight, the weight average molecular divided by number average molecular weight. If narrow molecular weight distribution, so you have a average molecular weight distribution in a certain range, so the strength would be too high. But again, you have to think how to process it, because if you have higher molecular weight, it's very difficult to process the material. So that means the viscosity part is very high in case of styrene butadiene, and which is have the higher molecular weight application. Another part I can clarify here, like why people go for those synthetic rubber, because the TG, which is the glass transition temperature. So glass transition temperature is such a temperature, like this is a transition between glassy zone to rubbery zone. So in if you have the lower glass transition temperature, let's say minus 70, minus 80, then so you will have an advantage in the traction. So like in case of synthetic rubber, SBR and BR, these are the range in between. Sometimes even it depends on the styrene content, but it can be vary from even minus 40 to even the minus 20, even sometimes even minus 10 in case of rubber, because the glass transition temperature depends on how much styrene content and what is the mobility in a certain temperature. If you are increasing the temperature, and there is a three different kind of mobility: the vibrational mobility, the rotational mobility, and then those things actually start after certain temperature. So if you have, let's say, in case of one rubber, if minus 70 or minus 80, so that's what in room temperature they are much more flexible, NR or SBR, because the glass transition temperature for NR is minus 70 or minus 80, and in case of styrene butadiene minus 50 or even sometimes minus 20. So at room temperature, that's what they are rubbery phase, they are flexible. If you go below that temperature, in case of NR, if you go below minus 100, then these are behave like a glassy in nature.
Hmm.
In case of SBR, if you go below the glass transition temperature, maybe SBR glass transition temperature is minus 50. If you go to minus 60 or minus 70, then it would become glassy in nature.
So what does this glass means? That is, it's not stretchable after that, or
It's
what?
not stretchable. It
So
will
it's
like
a
a
hard thing then.
hard thing.
Okay.
It's like you can understood why polystyrene is hard in room temperature.
Hmm.
But the SBR is not hard in room temperature, correct? SBR you don't know, but any rubbery things is not hard, correct? But polystyrene is like a glassy in nature.
Okay.
It's like a glass. If you just drop it, maybe it will break. Although there is a strain, it will not break because of the glass transition temperature. In case of polystyrene, that temperature is plus 100. So if room temperature is minus 30, or let's say in today is too hot, maybe minus 40. Sorry, not minus 40, normal 40.
Yeah.
So in at 40 degrees, so it is too hard because the glass transition temperature start at 100 degree plus 100 degree because it's not reached that temperature. After 100, you will feel it will soften and it will melt like after 200 degree or something. In case of rubber like this, because if you go beyond minus 100 or minus 120, then it will behave like this polystyrene, like glassy in nature. But at room temperature, that's what it is, much more flexible. What we called at after that temperature, your entropy is less.
Okay.
I think you know the entropy. If the molecular movement is too high, and it get more space. Like for polystyrene, the entropy is too low at 40 degree. But in case of normal rubber at 40 degree room temperature, entropy is too high. In that way. But if you go in deeper, you will understand that this is the transition period from the glassy to rubbery. And in that temperature, if you go below that, it is more glassy, and beyond that, it is more rubbery. So we called and we choose all the rubber based on our requirement, and depends on the glass transition temperature.
So as you mentioned that the characteristics of all these sterile
Styrene.
styrene and butadiene and
Yeah.
all. So how these complex characteristics are held together to blend into a material for a tire.
Yeah, that's what means. Again, I am saying any tire composite, and you have to balance between viscous and elastic part.
Okay.
So the styrene is a more viscous part, and if you have a more butadiene is a more elastic part. Forget about styrene butadiene. If you have only butadiene has the major elastic in nature. Even if you have one butadiene ball, if you put it, the resilience is also too much high. So it will give you better rolling resistance, correct? Because the resilience is too high. But you need also grip. Grip will come from where? Grip means you need some viscous nature. That will come from the styrene. Okay. So it also depends on what is the styrene content, what is the styrene percentage. Majority in our application, if you increase the styrene content, then actually your grip or viscous part would be high. Then because the rolling resistance actually back of this thing, there is a heat generation. If you have lower rolling resistance compound, if you require, it should have low heat build-up characteristics. Why we are concentrating on heat? Because when tire rolls, you can imagine you have a higher load and you are running at 100 degree, 100 kilometer per hour or 80 kilometer per hour. How much heat it is generating inside this composite, you can imagine. So that heat, if it not dissipating throughout the surface, if it is concentrating in somewhere, then it will fail. So in case of lower rolling resistance or lower heat build-up compound, so the heat generation would be low. That's what our motivation is, and that we are till now concentrating only on rubber. So I can tell you, because only rubber will not give you the overall property what is the requirement for tire composite or any application. So that's basically you have to balance with putting some filler. Like we have a lot of filler, like carbon black is the majorly we are using, and silica for green tire, we are applying also silica. So if you, I can compare both the cases. Let's say you have same rubber SBR or NR, then when you have the carbon black, when you have silica, what is the major difference in case of property wise? And then you can see the heat generation is far lower in case of silica compound rather than the carbon black compound. Because in case of carbon black, there is no chemical bond sorry, with the rubber, because there is a physical bond. a physical interaction, because we called as a polymer filler interaction. So if you have carbon black, then basically, you have natural rubber carbon black or SBR carbon black. Your heat buildup is too high because of the physical interaction. And here actually with the silica, you have the silanol group or OH group. You are bonding those groups with your rubber. So you have a chemical bonding. So wherever you have a chemical bonding, and then you will have a lower heat buildup or lower rolling resistance in case of silica compound. And that is one part. Another thing is the interaction, like polymer filler interaction, how it comes. One thing is you can have a physical interaction, you can have a chemical interaction. I think it is clear, if you have more chemical interaction, you will have a more strength and you will have a low rolling resistance. So in that case, your SBR silica, and if you have some functionalized SBR, so like you want to develop some functional groove on the SBR, and in case of silica you have a silanol groove. So we are utilizing certain coupling agent, so it can bond together between your silica and between your rubber. Those things cannot happen sometimes for in case of natural rubber, because all the rubber majority are the non-polar, because they are not polar in nature. But in case of silica, you have a polar groove. So the polar non-polar interaction is very less. So if you want to interact between your polar non-polar, one is your non-polar rubber and polar filler, then you have to have a some coupling agent. And coupling agent is like a surfactant. You have a one polar end which is can interact with your filler, and one non-polar end which can be interact with the rubber. Then you can get a better properties what is the your requirement is. So higher the polymer filler interaction, better is the tensile strain, modulus, all the physical properties what you are expecting. So in that way, coming back to your question, the styrene and the butadiene part, and what is the, let's say you are blending with styrene butadiene and only butadiene, a styrene butadiene rubber, SBR rubber with the NR rubber, that you need to know what are the property you want to achieve. If you really require a strength, if you really require a load carrying capacity and more tensile strength, then you should go better natural rubber content composite. If you want to have balanced property of a traction, and let's say dry traction or even the wet traction, you have to go for the SBR. And in SBR also there are different, as per the process, it's a emulsion polymerization, solution polymerization. Then better people are going towards the solution SBR, because it's functionalized and you can get the better interaction with the filler, and you can achieve the better properties like all passenger car. Like till now I have not explained, maybe we can come later. One is your truck bus radial segment, which is the bigger tire, maybe 10 or 20 or those bigger tires. And one is your passenger car where you have 13 inch, 14 inch, 16 inch, all the four-wheeler cars. So that requirement is different. Here majority requirement is grip, safety, rolling resistance, comfort, noise. But when you go for the track bus radial, actually a requirement is completely different. You need a more load carrying capacity. You need a best wear resistance property. You need a better dimensional stability. All these things comes to play there. And you can then go for the two-wheeler, three-wheeler tire. In case of two-wheeler, three-wheeler tire, there also you require a different property. They are and the skidding capacity, or the load carrying capacity and the grip, everything, because your area is reducing. This is also a major challenge. When in case of track bus radial, you have a better contact area, or on this width. But in case of two-wheeler, three-wheeler, you can imagine, so it can skid very easily, because you can understood for two-wheeler, three-wheeler, balance is really important. Because it's not holding, because if you don't have a proper balance, for tire also same, it can skid very easily because of the low contact area between your road to the tire. So challenges are everywhere. There actually pattern plays a major role, because in case of, if you see two-wheeler, three-wheeler tire, this pattern is completely different than your four-wheeler tire, and the four-wheeler tire pattern is completely different than your truck bus radial tire. After today, after this discussion, if you go and notice those things, you will understood what I am explaining here, because nobody concentrate on those patterns. And there are so many information. I can request all, whoever is listening this podcast or something, if you really has an interest on, maybe everybody is riding car, and one advertisement was there long back, I have noticed that everybody is talking about I needed this car or that car, I needed this BMW, I need to change the interior.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks actually those interior, those high end value car like BMW or Audi, it has no meaning if your tire is not as good as what the requirement is.
Mm.
Because anyway, if you have BMW or if you have Maruti Suzuki, it doesn't matter. If tire goes fail, then
Mm.
whole car, going to be
Yeah, it's
have
of
the
no
waste,
use.
no use.
Yeah.
So the point is everybody should cautious about the tire and tire pressure. If there are a lot of information, on the serial side of the tire or the sidewall, if you can notice there is what is the ratio of this thing and what is the size of all, so many information are there. What is the manufacturer? What is the PSI? And those things if once notice very clearly, they can understood, so much value addition you can give it once you are going for changing your tire, or even you can ask for any service like what how much psi you should hold it for
Mm.
longer period of time. It depends on size of the car, it depends on the holding pressure of a tire, but everything is written there on the serial side of the tire or the sidewall of the tire. So my what I can request you, so as much as if you can get a very high end car, it has no use, you have to also concentrate what is the tire life and how you are driving and what is the NSD. Maybe after certain period of time, I have seen in for so many people, especially in roadside, maybe there is no NSD, means it's already flat tire,
Mm.
when the grooves are no longer there, you can also notice, but still it's running and
Mm.
carrying a load. So how danger it is, you can understand. So those pattern what I am talking about, the reap pattern or lock pattern or everything, already it's flat tire, but people are running.
Mm.
So anytime it can, accident can happen because
Mm.
there is no grip at all. It's already, we call it a run flat tire. It's already flat tire. So there is no groove. So who will holding that, that road? So there is no grip behavior. So those things are really important. It's not, it will not happen especially for passenger car or for like what we are using, but you can notice those things especially for transport car, or because they are very reluctant, and that's
Mm.
what major accident can happen.
Yeah.
So this is very dangerous, and the safety is the major aspect in case of tire. As I said, anybody is, whoever is traveling, either traveling by flight and then by bus or two wheeler, three wheeler, everywhere you have to depend on tire. So it's a very important property. I'm very happy that I am working in the tire industry, and it's a very complex in nature, but people should understand how much effort it goes to have one perfect tire and as per the requirement.
Mhm. So as we discussed that, in a tire we use sterylene and butadiene, okay.
Mm.
So how it is used in different way in, with years, okay, with time, how it is used differently to achieve the high performance, eco-friendly behavior and the fuel efficiency in tire. That is the advancement which is happening with this thing.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, still we are concentrating in rubber. That's what I can explain here. But it's not about the rubber alone. Like when you are coming from the natural rubber to synthetic rubber, and it's not alone synthetic rubber can do whatever the requirement is. It's a balance between, and it's a combination between, like I have explained little bit, the NR and SBR part, and it change the ratio.
Mm.
Like in case of certain application, you are utilizing natural rubber maybe 80 parts and synthetic maybe 20 parts,
Mm.
but in different applications, especially in passenger car and other, that the blend ratio can be reverse.
Mm.
There you can have the SBR is more like 80% NR is, and that is one aspect in case of tire. Another aspect is it depends, to achieve those property where you are using carbon black, or where you are using silica, or where you are using some clay or different things as per the requirement is. So modern days, or as per the requirement, if you see some nowadays those for the urban application like Thar and other application, you have a big tire and load carrying capacity is also high. So in that case, your application base, so you have to think how to design this thing. There maybe you have to utilize more natural rubber part or more carbon black, so it needs a strength also. It's not about, because these are four-wheeler, but these the in urban application and a very rough application, you can say, they are utilizing. So in that case you need a more strength, you need a less wear resistance, sorry, more wear resistance, so less wear particle should come out from the surface, and you need a grip also. So there you require a balance property. That is one part. And the coming back to your question, like environmental friendly. So environmental friendly, you can think of two three different aspects. So if your tire as it is as a high wear resistance, so it is definitely a wear resistance, depends on the emission. Because if you have lower rolling resistance tire, that means your lower fuel higher fuel efficiency, then you will have a low greenhouse gas emission. So if your the better fuel efficient tire can help to reduce the greenhouse gases.
Yeah.
And in that case, those synthetic rubber or SBR based silica plays a major role, because combination of synthetic rubber like SBR and silica will give you low rolling resistance tire and better grip, and you will get also the balance property of the load carrying capacity. And the combination of synthetic rubber and then silica, and along with all those chemicals what I have already discussed, like seal and coupling agent we are utilizing, and the people can use nowadays little bit clay or some conducting filler to enhance further the whatever the property requirement is. Because modern days requirement is, in case of OEM, they required both. So rolling resistance, there should be a lowest rolling resistance as possible. There should be a highest wear resistance, and the braking distance should be low. There should be a low noise. There should be a high durability of the tire. The comfort of this tire should be maximum. So all these things they required, but with optimized cost. Because the point what you have raised, like to make a environmental friendly or any sustainable development require the cost. So without cost, it cannot be. Like synthetic rubber can be developed from the petroleum waste or fossil fuel waste. But when you go for the natural or renewable sources like sugar cane or from the waste food, those things require a cost. And so that is the role of an industrialist or businessman. See, as a common man, your question is correct. Maybe people always require an environmental friendly product, but the thing is, from the industry point of view, as I said, they always think about the cost effective. Maybe that's what nowadays, the one is organic food, one is the non-organic food.
Yeah, exactly.
So people are moving towards the organic food, and if you can think of that, organic food cost is even three times maybe higher than the normal food.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
So if you want to go for eco-friendly and those kind of thought process, so you have to pay more. But in Indian scenario, very less people are ready to pay, for that amount of money. That's what, whatever we say, the organic food and this thing. So it's not very common to get those food in a very optimized cost. So in that way, the research is going on, the development is there. But if it has to be implemented from the environmental friendly aspect, then the society has to accept the point that we have to buy the same thing within a 1.5 time more cost. That needs to be there. Otherwise, coming back to the tire, so it's a balanced property, neither complete natural rubber and neither synthetic rubber. But yes, depends on the requirement, the blend ratio can change. The carbon black to silica or the dual phase filler, those things can come. And sometimes even some nano filler also to get, because everybody wants the, like I can mention here, in a modern world, lightweight and better strength. That's what the development is, plastics things come. Previously steel was the majorly used things, strength is also there, but nowadays same strength you can get it in case of plastic, because people want a lighter weight and better strength. In case of tire also, development is going on towards that direction. You can reduce the tire weight, like I said, the inner liner, maybe you can reduce the thickness, you can reduce the tread weight. Because if you reduce the weight, definitely you will get a better rolling resistance, because your weight of the tire is low. In the same way, people are thinking how to develop a lightweight tire, keeping your everything in same, like your all the properties and requirement is same, requirement is not going to change. But what is going to change? Like you are developing certain material, like high strength material. Even the fabric what you are using, the high tensile or high tensile strength, those fabrics. So in that way, for lighter weight tire, the development is going towards that direction. So as minimum as material you can use, getting a good strength with some advanced polymer or advanced filler. In that direction, research is heading towards that.
Here comes the end of the first episode of this video because the discussion went so deep and so dynamic that we had to divide it into two parts, that is the part 1 and part 2. So here is just the end of part 1. In the part 2, you will be getting lots and lots more insights with highly relatable examples, which will definitely let you go through the journey of the tire and the tire industry overall, of polymer science and the polymer science field. So there you'll be getting more insights and more knowledge on the same topic. So stay tuned to have Dr. Jagannath Chandra on the next episode. So until then, see you. Bye.